and emphasize that this could just as well be done in the Faroes. First, you have an idea. Now, an idea certainly you can get in the Faroes. People get ideas all the time. And you could do your background check in the Faroes, provided that you were willing to subscribe to databases and so on, which aren't extremely expensive, just a couple or a few £1,000s a year, or a few 10,000 kroners a year. You could do your simulations. The software is not so expensive, not as expensive as the software that, for example, injector doors are using. These are quite accessible and quite easy to get hold of. Prototyping, I argued, the Faroe Islands are particularly good at because they're used to working on one-off projects and testing. So, we have it all. We can do it. Why aren't we? What is the key ingredient that is missing? Is it not relevant? Is that the case? Or is the industry not interested? I know that that's not the case because we get more contracts in at Newcastle in my group than we can manage. And the income of those are several million Danish kroner a year. So the industry is definitely interested. What's the key ingredient that is missing? And what's the key ingredient in any research project? It is the researcher. So we realize we need researchers. So how do we attract them? Which brings me on to my third point. Attracting researchers to the Faroe Islands. Right. I'm sure we all agree that the country is beautiful, the people are nice, but there has to be a catch, there has to be a carrot. Somehow you have to persuade people to leave their home and come to the Faroes to do research. Now, the basic requirements for carrying out research would be good equipment, that you have decent equipment, you have decent salaries for people, you allow people to be kept up to date so that they could go to conferences, have access to publications and so on. But all of that might not be enough. If we look at other countries, both Denmark and Sweden have a scheme where they give a tax relief. So if you come into Denmark or Sweden as a researcher, the first 3 years you pay significantly less tax. And of course, most people outside of Scandinavia think that in Scandinavia you're very heavily taxed. So it wipes away those obstacles, if you like, and hence people might want to come in to these countries. So that's a way that they've used to try and attract researchers. In Japan, they've used a scheme where they try and attract postdocs, so people who have just finished their PhD, people who are already trained in doing research and are ready to go. They're ready to hit the ground running. And you come to Japan for 2 years, they take care of relocation and all that, and accommodation. So you don't really have to worry about that. For 2 years you're in Japan, and the following 2 years you're in either your home country or at a different university. So the benefit for Japan is that they get a good workforce for 2 years, and that, well, postdocs usually have to think ahead because they have to think about their next position. So while they're in Japan, they don't have to think about that at all because they know exactly where they're going after. And possibly more importantly, once they finish in Japan, they go to this other place, and hence you'll have future collaboration. It's much easier to collaborate with people that you know personally, rather than people you've read about. Now, both of these, or all of these schemes, might focus more on the temporary staff, who, for example, the Scandinavian one, you might come in for 3 years and then you might leave again, or you might just have settled and then stay on. And the Japanese one definitely focuses on temporary because it's just for 2 years. Australia had a different scheme where they sourced out Australian nationals who were leading professors in their fields and then gave them a good offer that they couldn't refuse, as they say. A colleague of mine worked with a Cambridge professor who was from Australia and got one of these offers and accepted. Now, his offer was something like they paid all relocation, so they paid everything for his family to come. They provided accommodation for a certain time period. They offered him quite a healthy budget to set up a lab so that he could carry on his research in Australia rather than in Cambridge. A very healthy salary of, in Danish terms, or in Danish kroners, 1.5 to 2 million Danish kroner a year. So it's a good salary. and he was offered funding for 3 PhD students and 2 postdocs. And hence, it was very attractive. And so you go from doing your research in Cambridge, and rather you just go to Australia where you can continue it. Now, the Faroe Islands possibly should do something similar. Either maybe a tax relief scheme or something like that. However, we don't really have anything like that. The university in the Faroes is not allowed to negotiate salaries, so they're not allowed to offer higher salaries, and we don't have any tax incentives, as I mentioned. Possibly we should. If you think about Denmark and Sweden, which are countries just next to us, now these have very large and healthy research institutes. If we think of DTU in Copenhagen, we think of Lund University in Sweden. On the industrial side, ABB and Vestas, both of which are world leaders in their fields, not Nordic leaders or Scandinavian leaders, but world leaders. So if countries that have these leaders have or feel that they have to somehow attract researchers actively, possibly the Faroe Islands might have to get its head out of the sand and do something similar. Right, so to summarize, I believe that both the Tacit as well as the Center of Maritime Studies and Engineering could really benefit from each other. Alternative research could thrive in the Faroes, provided that we had researchers. And the Faroe Islands might just have to join in the race to get researchers if we want them to come here. We might have to join this competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bogi.